All right, here we go. It is the Nightcap, brought to you by Bearcat Journal. Wow, I screwed that up. I'm going to start over, Aaron. I'm going to start over.
Okay.
All right, everybody, welcome in. It is the Nightcap, right here on BearcatJournal.com, brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Galactic Fried Chicken. Visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Get down to Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up. Save yourself 15% on your order, or, call ahead. Maybe have them cater your tailgate, cater your watch party at home. Who doesn't want some fried chicken, some chicken tendies, some great sides, some Galactic sauce?
Yep.
That sounds like an award-winning party to me. All right, let's get rolling, Aaron.
City.
It's the best fried chicken in the city. They have the best sauce in the city. And, we're a pro sauce podcast here.
For sure.
Let's get rolling. We are in heavy football mode. But
Correct.
Tuesday was the start of basketball practice.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we had
2
our
days.
first. They're in defensive boot camp.
2 days.
Right now. They did a practice Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. They did a practice this morning. They did a practice this afternoon. They'll do another practice tomorrow morning and go through and work 3 days on nothing but defense. But we had a press conference today. It was, if I'm being honest, one of the better basketball press conferences I can ever remember. We got Wes Miller.
Mm-hmm.
We got new associate head coach Chad Dollar.
Mm-hmm.
We got John Newman, who was better than I ever remember John Newman being in a press conference setting.
He's so fun.
And we got Landers Nolly.
Mm-hmm.
I love Landers Nolly.
How can you not?
Landers Nolly is kindred spirits with me in a way. We don't know each other like that yet. But that dude has some brutal honesty in what he says.
He's not a bullshitter.
If you ask him, he's going to tell you. We'll get to it, but he said maybe the most interesting thing we've heard in a UC basketball press conference in years. Maybe two of the most interesting things we've heard in a UC basketball press conference in years today. So let's discuss, because I think we got a little something coming tomorrow that the people should stay tuned into. We're going to get into basketball mode. I think this has a chance to be a good team. I don't know if it has a chance to be a great team yet. Depends on how they come together and how they play, especially how they play Maui. But I think this has the chance to be a really good team. And we'll get to more of that as I get to more practices and get more of a stockpile of knowledge of where this team is at, where this team is headed. I'll ask you, what did you take when you listened to Wes Miller today?
He just seems that he's so calculated in everything that he's doing right now.
Yes.
And he chooses his words very specifically. He is, again, also, I don't think he's one to bullshit either. He's just very to the point. This is what we're doing right now. We're focused on today and today only. Anytime you ask me, we're focused on today and not, of course, he's also looking towards the future. Let's be all the way honest.
Yeah, obviously.
In recruitment and what have you. But as far as the team goes right now, he's not getting ahead of himself. He's not, I don't know. He's just very much in we're focused on what we are doing right now.
I think he feels like he has a much better team than he had last year.
How can you not? The roster from top to bottom is better than you had last year.
But I think he's cautiously doing that. Like he's not braggadocious about it. I think if we do the work every day, we have a chance to be pretty good.
Well, and he brought up a very specific point, and I think all four of them, I think, touched on this, except for maybe Landers Nolly, but just in the fact that this is the first real offseason for everyone.
A lot of these guys have had, yeah.
And that's not to be taken lightly, I guess, because we've seen some of the improvement even in the summer league stuff from Davenport, from
well, I think here's what's important, right? Do we believe Mike Rayfeld is one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the country?
Absolutely. Why do you think UConn poached him?
Right. So if we believe that, then we have to believe that there is a ton of, and Wes talked about the 7 returning guys being more important than anything because they got that full April, May, June, July, August offseason that most of them had lacked for so long. And they got to do it with one of the best in the country in Mike Rayfeld. We when we talk about football, we talk about how important Brady is in the offseason,
right,
to take these guys to the next level. From what we saw from Mike Rayfeld in his previous stint here, that is something we should now expect from the basketball program in each offseason. And that was reiterated by Wes, by John Newman, and by Landers Nolley.
So I don't know. I think that was something certainly to take away. Some of the other stuff, as far as like the staff, I mean, Wes and Chad both hit heavily on speaking on the staff, almost more so than the players, and their relationships with one another, and what this offseason has been like working with each other, and just how
these guys are vibing.
Man, they're all so, I wasn't on the beat when Mick was here, so I don't know that I was really as hyper inside as far as knowing even the names of all of the coaches outside of Larry Davis. That said, these guys really, really care about one another, and they all really get along so well. And I don't know that,
and they complement each other really well.
And you heard some of that too, and as far as the relationships that they have, and how, when we know that when they go south, you have Morgan and Dollar working in tandem, and then with all the relationships that they've built, how some of them overlap in ways that aren't necessarily as obvious to the untrained eye. And so you see some of these things happening. So I don't know.
I talked a little bit about that on the BCJ podcast tonight.
Yeah.
So Morgan and Dollar are, separated by a decent number of years in age. But what that allows for is like, okay, so Chad Dollar has a 15-year relationship with a high school coach. And Andre Morgan has a 10-year relationship with an AAU coach. And they both know, like, the workout guy or whatever the case may be. And then there's a kid that meets in the middle. He plays for this AAU team that Morgan has a connection to. He plays for this high school team that Dollar has a connection to. They both know the workout guy because he's kind of in the middle. Like, or maybe like, one of them grew up with this kid's mom because they're from the same area in Atlanta. Like, when you're connecting the dots, and this is what I said during the BCJ pod tonight, and I'll say it again tonight. When you're connecting dots, the more dots you have, the better the picture is.
Right.
If you got 6 dots, it's like just lines, right? If you got 23 dots, like, oh, that's a picture. Like I know what that picture, like I know what that is.
Right.
And that's what they've kind of started to build in the South with these two guys. I asked Wes a lot about promoting Chad Dollar. I asked Chad Dollar a lot about what it meant to be promoted.
Right.
And you can tell that meant something special to him.
Well, I mean, even when he came to Cincinnati to begin with, it was talked about that he wanted the opportunity to coach more and not just be a guy on the recruiting trail, because every time he was at a school, he was almost relegated to, you're a recruit guy, the end.
That's the reality of Black assistant coaches, is that they're seen like, go get me players, and not seen as great basketball coaches. As Chad Dollar pointed out, my dad is a legendary high school coach. My brother was a great player and now into the coaching business. Like, basketball is our life. It's not just I can get you players. It's I can help you win and be a better basketball team. And I thought that part of this particular press conference was fascinating. It was a really interesting insight.
I was super intrigued too. Just the way he talked about his initial response was, I hope this doesn't rock the boat with, a guy like Mike Roberts, who's been at Wes's side for years and years.
They went to prep school together.
Right. So just hearing his thought process through all of that was, I thought, really, really cool, and gave you some insight to a guy who, truthfully, we haven't heard talk very much since he's gotten here. Not publicly, anyway.
No.
So
I just think that meant so much, because remember, he's the outsider. I said,
right.
Wes Miller
didn't have that connection.
Wes Miller had a prep school connection with Mike Roberts. Mike Roberts was on his staff at Greensboro for years. Andre Morgan was on his staff at Greensboro. Chad Dollar had never really worked with Wes Miller before. For Chad Dollar to come in and make that impression that I want you to be my right-hand man speaks incredible volumes to the value of Chad Dollar and what he has brought to this program in just a year and just this much time.
Right.
Not just as a recruiter. Because when everybody, he got hired, everybody's like, dollar bills, yo.
I mean, the joke writes itself.
Right. Now it's reality that, like, this dude is an asset. Like, this dude is a guy that's been in the business for a long time. He's worked at every level, D2, American, SEC. Like he's been through the ups and downs. Now he's at a great spot, and he's kind of worked his way into a really prominent role here that he seems to be really comfortable in as it expands. Let's get to Newman and Nolly.
Okay.
Those two were outstanding today. Newman, you can tell, is more comfortable now in his skin. He
talking when he talked about his appreciation for Cincinnati, not just his maturation as a 23-year-old, one of the old heads on the team, but also just his appreciation for the city. Like, as a fan of,
he's you know what, Aaron? He's a guy that 20 years from now is probably still going to live here. Like, do you know there's a shit ton of those guys? I actually had a conversation at the tailgate on Saturday about this, that guys come here and they stay because it becomes home. John Newman, I think, is one of those guys.
Well, and when he talks about he's a blue-collar guy, it's a blue-collar city, just the love he has for the city. And we've seen it. Like, this isn't him just blowing smoke. Like, we've seen it in his Twitter interactions and talking about, like, he was first on board, I think, when Skyline started signing people to be representatives of Skyline on social media. So I don't know. It's just really cool to see him have such a love for the city and kind of get to see that side of him. That said, he also got to talking about hoops, as he spoke about Landers kind of has a whole lot of respect for John Newman. We got to hear that and them talk about having played against one another. They have
a great deal of respect for each other.
Yeah. And just kind of got to hear them each talk about one another in that regard. I don't know. I mean, I guess kind of getting back to John, though, like, just hearing about, again, another guy who has had, injuries and changing of teams, has never had this was his first real off season. So he got to speak on that and talk about, like, what that meant to him. Just he's a grinder, and he's certainly a guy that you want on your team. He emulates that. We talk at times about what it means to be a Bearcat. And I think that this guy is the just quintessential Bearcat.
Of all the guys on the team, I think you could label him as the Bearcat. Like, that's always been a thing, since I've been around this program. Like, recruit Bearcats. recruit guys that identify with the city, with the program, with what the program is, with how it operates. John Newman's got a ton of Bearcat in him. Hearing him talk about him and Landers going at it every day is like Landers is a guy that is incredible on the offensive end. John is a guy that is like hangs his hat on defense.
Right.
So hearing them both, and I don't, people didn't get to see this. I asked John about Landers, and he was like, "I don't want to talk about it with him here." Like,
that was on there.
Yeah. Well, no, what they didn't see was when John got done, he left, and then he came back and pulled up a chair and sat down and said, I want to hear him talk about me. And then afterwards, because I had talked to, and the people that are familiar here know, there was a weekend in Spartanburg, South Carolina, whatever year it was when Landers was going into his senior year, that he put on the most incredible show I think I've ever seen over a 3-4 day period. He was unconscious. He
said as much.
Every shot. It changed his life. Like, it was one of those things, Aaron, where everybody was scrambling. I had a conversation with a probably a coach that was in Wes's conference at the time about who is this Landers Nollies dude? And he was like, "Oh no." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "I've been trying to keep that kid quiet for like, I'm trying to keep that kid quiet for 6 months. Is he blowing up?" And I'm like, "He hasn't missed for 2 days." And he's like, right? Like, it was the most, like, because a lot of those things happen over, like, somebody is crazy hot for a day or crazy hot for 2 days. Landers Nollie for 4 days just was as good as anyone I've ever seen.
Well, he said he went from zero
offers to 50.
Yeah.
From Wednesday to Sunday, he went from 0 offers to 50. I have been dying to get him in a press conference setting to ask him about that weekend. Because you watched, from my perspective, you just watched somebody change their life.
And how cool is that?
Right. You watch somebody control their destiny and change their life. That's amazing.
Right.
And to hear him acknowledge it, like, I've never played like that again in my entire life.
He's like, I'm still searching. I'm still searching for that.
That was the cool thing for me, that he acknowledged what I saw. What I saw was, my God. And what he saw was, yeah, I ain't never doing that shit again. But afterwards, when the press conference was done, the two of them were arguing because John Newman played for CP3, which was, the number 1 Nike team that year. And Landers played for Team Loaded Virginia, which was the number 1 Adidas team that year. And they're going back and forth and like, who would you take? Who would you take? And I was like, look, CP3 might have been the better team, but if I get Landers Nollie from Spartanburg, I'm taking Team Loaded. Just the dynamic of those two was so fun.
Yeah.
Like, Newman was doing his press conference. Landers was sitting on the edge of the riser, and they were commenting back and forth. And then, like I said, Newman left for a second, and then he came right back in, pulled up a chair, and sat there and that's press conference gold. We don't ever get that.
And you talk about the relationship between them, but Landers spoke about the relationship between he and the rest of the team, and how it feels like he had already been with this team, transferred out, and now he was back.
Came back, right.
Which is crazy. I mean, obviously they played against each other with him being in Memphis, and you have 2 games a year where you're playing one another.
I've heard him bust guys' chops about like he joked with David DeJulius when they were picking sides one day for open gym.
Yeah.
And he was like, it doesn't matter who you pick. We're just going to double team you. And none of these other motherfuckers could score. It was like, oh. Like, that was, there's clearly the Memphis game plan. Remember when they went into that game?
Yep.
They just blitzed the shit out of Dave and nobody else could do anything.
Yep.
So hearing them joke about that, like, there is a genuine, like, respect and love for each other. I really think this is going to be a fun basketball season, man. I really do.
And obviously there's a respect for Wes Miller.
Yeah.
As we heard Landers Nolly compare him to a young
Larry Brown.
So
Larry Brown was an assistant in Memphis last year.
Correct.
Landers Nolly had a good relationship with Larry Brown. When Cincinnati became heavily involved, remember, Larry Brown's deepest roots are North Carolina.
Mhm.
He has been a mentor for Wes Miller since Wes Miller was a player at North Carolina. Wes Miller, in his infinite wisdom, searched out Larry Brown with the North Carolina connection. Like, I want to be a coach. Same he did with Roy Williams, right?
Right.
Imagine being like 22 and your mentors are Roy Williams and Larry Brown.
I feel like that's pretty good.
It's pretty fucking good. Yeah,
pretty good people to surround yourself with.
So I couldn't believe he said it. That the three reasons I came to Cincinnati were Chad Dollar, my relationship with Wes Miller, and the advice I got from Larry Brown about Wes Miller.
It's high praise.
Larry Brown, Memphis assistant, helped Cincinnati land Memphis transfer Landers Nolly.
It's a guy who speaks truth.
Yeah, is what it is.
I don't think at this point you can call Larry Brown a bullshitter. You can call him a cheater.
Yeah,
you can call him some different
things. A lot of things,
but I don't know that a bullshitter would be one of those.
Here's what I always respected about Larry Brown is that when he coached in college, he just always said, like, I don't care about your rules. My job here is to win games. I'm gonna do that.
Well, I mean, they've made it so easy for head coaches to skip out once they've broken the rules.
The rules don't even fucking matter.
Well, you don't even face any. I mean, how many times has a guy in Cincinnati, Sean Miller, broken rules, and what has he actually faced for breaking any of those rules? Nothing. Just move on to the next. Move on to the next place where you're going to break all the rules.
Right. So yeah. That was very revealing. Like the Landers Nolly interview, go watch that. Well, if you haven't watched anything from this, go watch the Landers Nolly.
You said there were two most interesting things: the Larry Brown comparison being one of those things.
We're getting long, but I actually thought about making this live tonight because there was so much from this to dissect.
Well, just quickly, what was the second thing?
The second thing was his acknowledgement of like how the environment at Memphis affected him last year, and how he let the negativity impact like his mindset and how he played the game and how he approached the game. Players are never that honest, Aaron.
It's especially maybe that's the new generation though is becoming more and more open and honest about any type of mental health issues that they're facing. We've seen that now over the course of the last, I guess, 5, 6, 7 years.
Sure.
At the NBA level, largely because college players are usually a little more timid in admitting those types of things.
College coaches are a little more dictators that they don't give you a platform to.
There is that. SIDs might make it a little more difficult. You spoke about that once, and we don't know. We want to put you back out there to speak about it again. But people are being more. They're embracing it more. Fans are embracing it more. The general public is embracing it more. So I don't know.
His comment was about how he impacted the Memphis locker room.
Yeah.
With some of his like riding the roller coaster.
Yeah.
Those two things, man. Like I'm gonna love. Last year was kind of pulling teeth because remember a lot of those guys had still been through what had happened
with the previous regime.
And they weren't open to really, a lot of that played out in the media. A lot of it was ugly.
Yeah.
There was a place last year that felt kind of weird when we were interacting with these guys.
Times they are a changing, Chad.
They felt very guarded. Today felt awesome because they were playing off each other. They were answering our questions in a very real and honest way. It was an awesome press conference from Wes Miller to Chad Dollar to John Newman to Landers Nolly. And if that's what 2022-23 is going to look like,
Sign me up.
I'm fired up. That's the nightcap. Thanks to Galactic Fried Chicken. We are BearcatJournal.com. We'll see you tomorrow night.
See ya.